Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another Video for History Value podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Kipp Davis. Welcome back to the show, Kipp.
Uh, sorry. Thanks, Jacob. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thanks, Jacob. It's good to be back.
So today, we're going to be talking about a course that you're doing with Myth Vision Podcast. Could you tell us the name of the course and what it's about?
Yeah, the course is titled Real Israelite Religions, Facts on the Ground, and Propaganda in the Bible. And there's really three aspects of the course that I think are important, which come out in the title. The first is that there was a variety of religious expressions within ancient Israel, despite what the Bible wants to communicate to us. When you look at the material culture and you compare it with the comparative literature from the ancient Near East, we come to discover that there was no single unified monolithic religion that the Bible wants to promote. It's much more varied than that, and the material culture and the comparative literature is very important for understanding and for seeing clearly what's happening there and this world behind the text. And I think maybe the most salacious element of this is the fact that the Bible itself is a product of this world, which worked very hard to reshape understandings of what religion in the ancient world of Israel actually looked like. What we see is that the Bible was actually a product of this. It was a product of power. Essentially, it was produced and controlled by the priests in the temple in Jerusalem. It was under the direction and the authority of the king, whose house and throne was basically right next to the temple in Jerusalem. And these two institutions controlled the literature, and they controlled the message, in effect, and attempted to reshape the way that the history was told about the region. So it's fascinating to look behind the curtain, basically, and to see what's actually going on, and then to also see how the texts have developed and understood this picture to their own for their own purposes.
When one looks at the ancient Israelite religion in comparison and contrast to what the Hebrew Bible tells us, how different was it?
It was different in a number of respects. I mean, one of the things that we can see throughout the Hebrew Bible is that while the Hebrew Bible denigrates this idea of these multiple religious expressions, it certainly acknowledges it in the sense that it's there. One of the features, the strong features of the Hebrew Bible text, is this fixation on how terrible the people are for going after other gods and for performing sacrifices outside of the temple of Yahweh in Jerusalem. So you can see that it's there. But what's really different is I guess the way it's presented and the way it's regarded. Because the Bible is preserving just this one side of the story, it has to denigrate these things that were actually very popular among the common people. And there were certainly rulers, kings in Judah, and in particular in Samaria and the north, who would promote over time this much broader religious perspective, which ended up becoming um, suppressed by later biblical writers. So, the ancient world of the ancient religious world of Israel was a polytheistic world. it was a world, particularly within the local households of the common people, where women played a much more prominent role in the expression and the practice of religion. They're provided a much more prominent role than they're ever given credit for within the Hebrew Bible itself, and some of this is really important for seeing, um, you know, the power structures at work, but also um, how important women were within this ancient world.
You look at the ancient Israel religion and look at the polytheistic aspects of it, um, namely like El being the father of the Jewish God. How many different deities did Israel actually venerate at the time prior to the onset of monotheism?
So that's a question we just don't know. And one of the reasons we don't know that is because while there are certainly fragments of these memories of other gods that were worshipped within the Jerusalem temple itself, uh, much of the time these ended up getting scrubbed, and the individual gods themselves became subsumed under larger categories like the abominations of the nations, or even just other gods. We do see elements of of them still in existence. I think most famously, you have um, the high god El, identified as Elyon in Deuteronomy 32, right alongside and in a superior position to Yahweh. You also have places where there's divine competition. There's a story in First Kings chapter 2 where the king of Moab, um, Misha, actually engages is in a fight with Judah and Israel, and he invokes his god, Chemosh, and Chemosh wins. And the biblical story about this basically says, well, all the Israelites just went home. But fortunately, we have a record from Misha's side himself on the Tel Dan inscription, which tells the story quite a bit differently, in which Misha's god Chemosh does a number and really puts Yahweh in his place. So um, we we can see elements of some of these other gods at work, and even some some clear identifications within the text itself. Most notably, Asherah. It appears was worshipped in the temple in Jerusalem. There's also an interesting text in I think it's First Kings chapter 15, when the king Hezekiah undertakes his religious reforms. uh, he removes something called Nehushtan, which is a deity, like looks like a snake deity, and seems to have been closely related to this serpent of bronze that we're told Moses fashioned, um, during the wilderness wanderings, and the Israelites worshipped in order to save themselves from this curse of poisonous snakes. So I mean, there's a couple examples there of gods that we can identify specifically that were worshipped in the Jerusalem temple, but really it is unclear.
When you talk about propaganda, a word that's
Mm.
in the title of the course, um, are you basically suggesting that the onset of monotheism in ancient Israel that brought an end to the polytheistic era down there, had its roots in propaganda? Does this have anything to do with Hilkiah and Josiah finding or supposedly finding a book or that they claim to have found?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting stories. Um, just within the Hebrew Bible itself. So, for your viewers who are unfamiliar with it, Josiah was a king who ruled in Jerusalem right around the end of the 7th century BCE, and he happened to come into power at the same time that the Assyrian Empire, who had exercised control over the region, was starting to wane, and it created a power vacuum. So, he took advantage of this, and basically the kingdom of Judah flourished as an independent kingdom for the first time in many years. Um, During this time, the book of Kings tells us in chapter 23 that the priests in the temple in Jerusalem find what they call a book of the law, a Torah. Um, they bring it to the king. The king is very upset by the contents of this book. They consult a prophetess who comes and tells them what the book means and what Yahweh's message is with regards to this book. And as a result of this finding, Josiah then undergoes a covenant renewal ceremony, and it says that he undertakes to do everything that is outlined within this book. And what follows then is his eradication of worship of all other gods in the Jerusalem temple, as well as in the region under his control in the entire kingdom of Judah. But in addition to that, he also eliminates the worship of Yahweh everywhere else except for the Jerusalem temple. And then finally, he celebrates the Passover, not as a localized feast where people would, we're told would celebrate the Passover in their own homes. No, for the first time, uh, we're told Josiah institutes this national pilgrimage festival where the Passover is celebrated just in the Jerusalem temple. So when scholars look at this, they say, well, I mean, all of that right there, this is the book of Deuteronomy, like this book of the law that the priests found is the book of Deuteronomy. And most think that this is not actually a discovery that was made, but that this was the point in time at which the book of Deuteronomy was actually written. So the book of Deuteronomy itself becomes an instrument of propaganda in order um, to promote this very radical religious reform, which saw the elimination of all sorts of worship of not just other gods but Yahweh as well outside of the Jerusalem temple. This strong focus on just worshiping Yahweh alone, but also just worshiping Yahweh alone in Jerusalem. And this is really important for a guy like Josiah, because by eliminating all religious expression outside of Jerusalem, he's effectively implementing a powerful control on what people think and what they do. And this is why I see this as a form of propaganda. It's a way of him promoting his own ideology, the power of his own kingdom, and it worked for a while. In large part thanks to the geopolitical situation that was taking place around Judah at this time.
For joining me today, Kipp.
Thanks, Jacob.
Hello viewers, thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and if any of you wish to further support this channel, please please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron, and or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during a live stream. Thank you.